All right. Let's start off with kind of talking about the dream that we have for Cabot, the city of Cabot, and kind of go from there. And both you guys have been in the city for a little while, so Russell, why don't you start and just kind of talk about in almost a tweet, kind of a dream for Cabot.
Okay. Our vision for Cabot has always been to see lost people come to know Christ, and from the moment that we started Cross Point Church up until today, where now we're becoming part of that church, that's always been our dream, is for people to come to Christ, and that's the bottom line. And we're just super pumped about seeing God opening doors so that we can accomplish that.
Absolutely, absolutely. Keith, what are some of the stuff we're seeing here? What are some of the stuff you've seen here in the Cabot community?
Well, I see that there's a large gap, the generation gap of young kids that are coming around the neighborhoods that they really do not have a place where they're accepted as far as a church. And what we're trying to do is set up a place where, everybody of every walk of life could be a part in and can be invested in and be loved when they walked in the door without the worry and fear of being rejected.
And I think we can build a place like that.
I know we can.
That's right. That's exactly right. I think God's got something great in store for that. A place for people to belong, a place where lives are being changed. That's a dream that I think God puts on the heart of all of us, because that's His dream.
That's right.
And a place where they can find a significant relationship with a shepherd. Kind of crazy how we've all met. It's kind of strange stories. Russell, talk about when we met.
I remember right. We were in prison, right?
That's right. Exactly.
No, we were looking at churches to kind of use as an educational process as we were getting ready to launch our church. And through Ron Selby, who was a mutual friend, we came and visited Mercy's Cross at the time and just kind of hit it off and been friends ever since. So
absolutely.
It's cool stuff.
It is good stuff. Keith, we had a funny kind of meeting when we first met too. How'd that come about?
It was interesting. I had somebody fill in the podium that morning, so the plans kind of went wayward, so we were free on a Sunday morning, and I just wanted to go visit a church that we could just be ourselves, not have any responsibility. So we came to what we thought was Mercy's Cross, which became that church, and just loved the service. Just came there, we were loved on, the way the people greeted us at the door, the way they kept contact with us and informed us about things that are to come. And my wife and I were just sitting at the table one night, and she just said, "You know what, you ought to contact Scott and just see some of these things that we could implement in our own church," because it was changing during that time. And so I gave you a call, and the funny thing that I never will forget my face, probably how it looked, but after we finished talking, you just looked at me and said, "Well, Keith, what would you think about coming to that church?"
Yeah.
And I was just kind of dumbfounded, I think, at the moment. Just kind of starstruck for a moment. I was like, wow, don't know, hadn't thought about that. So, but here we are.
That's right. That's right. On the cusp of something really big.
Large.
I think all of us have sensed throughout this whole process that it's like the rumbles before a volcano erupts. That's what it feels like. Yeah. I've seen out of the woodwork people coming and asking questions and wanting to get involved in cooperation. And I don't think I've ever seen, I think maybe we could all talk to this, where a group of churches, we see plenty of church splits, we've seen that, but what about when a group of churches decide to lay aside pride, ownership of their own, whatever, and come together and say, hey, let's come together and take the best of what we've got and put our best foot forward so that God is glorified and a city is one.
That's right.
What do you guys think about that?
Well, I don't remember who said it. Some famous preacher said, it remains to be seen what God can do with a group of people who don't care who gets the credit.
That's good.
And I'm sure we're not perfect at that, but I think we're getting close.
I agree.
I think God's just going to blow this place up.
Absolutely.
I agree.
Yeah, I like just the opportunity. It's amazing. Russell and I were probably 4 or 5 blocks apart as far as our churches. Mm-hmm. And I never knew him. Yeah. And how God can place 2 people at the right time and put us together along with you and see God work just the intricate details of all that is just amazing.
Isn't that incredible, though?
It is.
I mean, it really is. And what's been funny about this whole thing is how that everybody had risk in this. But everybody was, we all saw the bigger picture, and that's the part that excites me. The other part that excites me is I think we're onto something.
Yes.
It's kind of funny how that God says if His people will come together, you know, if they'll come together, then there's all these great things that God will accomplish. And we're seeing that already coming about. I mean, there's just crazy radical things that are happening in our favor that just couldn't happen. Funny how that God gave each one of us a puzzle piece.
That's right.
And everybody's bringing their puzzle piece and going, okay, here's my part, here's my part, here's your part. And when it comes together, we've got a beautiful picture. You know, it's just amazing, really.
It is.
It amazes me how much of it would appear to be random, you know, when you first glance at it. And then once you get into it, you realize, wow, God's really in that. 'Cause,
That's right.
you know, you and I, we talk fairly often, and that day, I guess back in July or August, you were telling me about Medina, Tennessee, and Thornton, Colorado, and Tel Aviv, Israel, and it was just, at that point, we were frustrated because we've got God's vision, we just didn't seem to have the resources to pull it off, and so we were frustrated with the way things were going, and you were telling me all that, and it's just kind of, you know, random thought in my mind. I said, well, do you want a campus in Cabot? Well, yeah. It's, you know, and that random conversation started the ball rolling, and you know, within just a matter of weeks, it was like, you know, I think this is where God's leading us.
That's good. That's good. And that was such a rich conversation. There was a couple of aha moments in this where all of us, something was said, and all of us stopped and went, wait a second, what? You know, I mean, it was just kind of one of the, where we all had to stop and process it, because, you know, what's funny is that much of this is not things that people think about or even think is a possibility.
Sure.
But being willing to lob that out there and say, what if? What if? And then be able to see the results of people who say, I'm willing to do the what if because I know that God is the what is. And just see that.
Amen.
I mean, it's just exciting. I got chill bumps. I got a chill bump moment right there, man.
That's right.
So.
But it's not just us, it's the people around us that
Oh,
we
yeah.
didn't even know. Cause
Oh, yeah.
I knew how frustrated I was. I didn't realize how frustrated the folks at Crosspoint Church were, because they were feeling the same frustrations I was feeling.
You bet.
We just hadn't articulated it to each other. And then when I start talking about, you know, we want people to come to Christ, and it's just we're reaching some, but we're not reaching nearly enough. And it's they're having the exact same feelings I am. It just was never made apparent until we started working on it. And now we've got people that are, you know, they're about to blow up just because, you know, God's using them, and they're seeing how we can actually accomplish what we want to accomplish.
You bet. You bet. Well, you know, one of the things that's brought us together is to plant a church that changes the city of Cabot. We don't believe we have all the answers. We do believe we have the answer, but we don't have the market cornered on the Holy Spirit, nor do we have the market cornered on Jesus. And there are some great churches in the city of Cabot, and we want to partner with these churches, by the way. That's something that we've seen out of this cooperation, that as we continue to just partner with people, God blesses it. And we're going to continue to do that because we want God to be glorified. Amen. And whatever that needs to look like, we're going to do that. You know, one of the other things that I think is kind of intriguing, as we go into this, we realize and know that we have to have, for us to be a successful church, we have to make a big priority to the next generation.
Yes.
And that starts with our kids.
That's right.
The kids in the city of Cabot. We've got some plans that we've begun to put together that we've prayed over, we've wept over and prayed over on our face about the kids. And we've got a children's ministry plan that is going to be nothing short of phenomenal. Keith, talk a little bit about what we're doing with the children's stuff.
We are literally tearing down walls.
That's right.
To make room for the children of this community. The first through the fifth grade, they are going to have a dynamic atmosphere where they can come, they're going to have fun, but in the midst of that fun, we're going to instill the truth about Jesus Christ.
You betcha.
And they're going to come to know Him and build that relationship with them. But here's what's so cool about all this. One thing that I've noticed about that church is they're investing in these children to be participants.
Yeah.
Not just spectators.
Yeah.
So that's going to be the key element of the difference of this church, because we're equipping the saints truly from a young age to take the places of you and I.
Sure.
And Russell.
That's right.
And they're going to come in, but it's not going to be that big old step. They're going to gradually go into where they're not going to have to learn everything from the get-go.
right.
Like me, I felt like I was thrown in the the boiling water.
Yeah.
You know, when I first went into ministry, welcome to Ministry 101.
Yeah, yeah.
Things you can't learn in seminary.
That's right. That's exactly right. That's exactly right. Russell, talk about the Children's Center. What's going to make it, what makes the Children's Center at that church, Cabot, so exciting?
Well, just from the moment they get there, when they're walking in, climb the rock wall and slide in, and just the music going, and Chuck E. Cheese will probably come out here and want to take notes and see what we're doing, just because they'll want to redesign their place. I'm thinking I may be called into children's ministry just so I'll get to hang out back there.
Exactly.
The level of excitement and the fun that they're going to have. They'll be dragging their parents out of bed every Sunday morning. We got to go this Sunday. We got to go to church. That church, the slide. We got to go. And in the middle of all of that, we'll tell them about Jesus, and they'll grow up learning about their Savior and learning about the serving and the I Serve Others. Watching a video a while ago of the I Serve Others event and all the adults, but then there's almost as many children there as there were adults.
Absolutely.
And that's the legacy that you guys were talking about earlier, of the next generation. They're gonna learn that church is not about me. It's not about what I can get out of it. It's going to be about learning to serve others and learning about sharing Christ in the community and just having an impact and changing the world.
Yeah, yeah. You know, another part that we're working on that we believe is an important part too is what we want to do with students. You know, we want our students to have the opportunity to really live out God's calling for their life. So a student is not incidental. A student is actually, in a lot of ways, the missionary component to our church, because they're going to places we can't go. Students go to school. We're no longer allowed to go on the school campus. If you're a pastor, you can't go. I mean, you can't go there. You can't share the gospel. But what we can do is we can equip students with the truth, and we can equip students with a life that says God is real and that God loves the world that we live in, loves these people, and be able to send them in. So we've got some amazing stuff planned for students. I sat through the student ministry last night in Sherwood, and I'm just enamored by how these students have a community. They've got a community, and they're doing their own sound, they're doing their own media, they're doing their own lighting, they're responsible for themselves. I mean, it's amazing to watch. And then at the same time, they're getting this deep content and a message that's teaching them how to live. It's really cool, and we want that same thing here. You know, we've got some big things planned also when it comes to really guest services. That component that says, you're welcome, we're glad you're here. What's some of the stuff that we're looking at to do in that area, Keith? What are we thinking on?
Well, we've got some teams that are going to be established that, one, they have a genuine way about them as far as greeting and meeting people. They just have a desire to truly just accept people where they are, but people can see when people are fake. Yeah. And when I walked in of that church in Sherwood, there was a genuineness there that you walked in the door and you're like, I'm home. Yeah. You had that home feel. So that's what we want to emulate and let people know, that when they walk through this door, they're going to have a feeling for the first time, possibly in a long time, for some, I'm home. This is it. This is where I belong.
It's good. It's good. It's good. You know, the adults, we've got something planned for the adults as well. I mean, because we believe that worship and the Word are important. We believe that those two things are critical components. And honestly, I don't know of a church that has more stacked talent in the area of worship than what thatchurch.com and Cabot's going to have. There's more worship talent on this team than I've ever seen on a church plant. I mean, there's churches that run several thousand people that will not have the worship team that thatchurch.com and Cabot has. That's right. And take credit for that's right. That's right. And talk to us about that a little bit. A couple of major components of that you had a little something to do with.
Yeah, my daughters Erin and Kristen Erin started out as our worship leader, when she was like 16 years old, and she's just incredible. She moved off to Texas and went to the seminary there and got her master's degree and all, and then almost immediately became part of a fairly large church there, a Connect Church, and ended up being on their praise team and was singing just about every week. And then when she left, Kristen came right along behind her, and when you listen to them, they sound just alike. You can't. Amazing. If you're not looking at them, you can't tell which one is singing. But they're just incredible. I don't care if they are my kids; they're incredible.
They are. Well, I tell you what's funny. What's been funny to me is how that the holes that you had in a worship team, your team was incredibly strong.
That's right.
And we started putting this together, and we're like, whoosh. And then there were some components in Sherwood that were like, you put all this together, again, worship is going to be, I'll just say, it's going to melt your face off. People are going to run around Cabot, they're going to say, I don't even know who that person is because they got no face. Right. When they'll say they've been to that church, you know, because it's going to be stinking amazing. And you add the component of media. You know, our media team is second to none. Phenomenal. You add the component of lights, and I mean, this is going to be experience. You know, we're in a very traditional setting right now. We're in a traditional building, a traditional setting, but the transformation that's about to happen on this campus is going to be nothing short of a metamorphosis. Literally, we're going to take a worm and we're going to go to the cocoon and we're coming out a butterfly. Right. I mean, it's going to be phenomenal. But the word's important too. This campus has the unique privilege of having 2 campus pastors. Now, in a lot of places, they would say, well, that's going to create division. But not the way we hum. Talk to a little bit, Keith, talk to a little bit about having a person on campus with you that has a vested interest, that has your back, that pulls with you. Talk about the value of that when it comes to church work.
Most of the time in ministry, as far as my experience, in the small church, the pastor wears a tremendous amount of hats.
Yeah.
And just the idea that you have a pastor that is coming alongside you, they have skin that's invested in the game, and our goal is the same. When you put those two together, it's a dynamic union.
It's a big deal.
It really is. But this is what is amazing about Russell's and my congregation coming together is we had a couple of events where they meshed, and it's like they've known each other forever. I mean, they're calling each other and calling, hey, what you doing this night? And you just don't get that. The unity that's already been built, and that's before we've even come in the building.
Yeah.
We've not started yet.
That's right. That's right. Talk about that a little bit, Russell. What is it like with having two campus pastors?
Let me just be selfish on this and tell you from this perspective. I've said this for years that every pastor needs a pastor.
Yeah.
And, you know, as a pastor, you're the counselor, you're the encourager, you're the one that's holding people accountable. But unless you're part of something bigger, it's really hard to get that for yourself. You know, when I'm having a bad day, who's going to encourage me? And the people that we pastor, they try to do that, but they don't really understand the dynamic of what you're trying to do. Mm-hmm. So I mean, they could say, you know, you're doing a good job, and that helps. I'm not putting that down, but well, you need somebody there to, you know, encourage you that knows what you're going through, and yes. Somebody could say, have you thought this through? You know, or I'm not seeing, you know, I'm not seeing evidence of your prayer life like I show you. Are you
That's
praying?
Good. That's good.
That's
rich.
That's
rich.
You got to have a pastor now.
That's
rich. I've got 2 pastors right here, and then there's others. You know,
sure.
Ronnie Reagan and Scott Williams, those guys, and you know, it's just incredible for me to be in a place where, you know, I've got people that, you know, I could have a bad day.
Yeah, that's right.
That's right.
That's right. That's right. And things don't cease to exist.
Yeah.
That's good. That's good. Let's talk a little bit about That Church organization, because, you know, it's been on our heart for a number of years now that we believe that when you look at the Great Commission, when Jesus said, you go therefore and you make disciples, you baptize them, you teach them to obey whatsoever I've commanded. When we look at that and you think about baptize and teaching people to obey, and you look at those 2 components, what you really see is the mission of the church. You know, someone can say, well, I work independent of the church, I don't need, you know, whatever, and I can win people. And some of that's somewhat true, but when you look at the Great Commission, it talks specifically about baptism, talks specifically about teaching people to obey. That's the mission of the church. Mm-hmm. We agree that communities can be transformed. Communities are changed. Communities need to have life-giving churches in
yes.
them. There's some buildings in communities that have steeples. There's some signs that are out front of those places, and they say church, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they are church. And I'm not trying to be judgmental. I'm just pointing out the fact that our mission is really important, to be giving life to community by planting churches. And how do you guys see in this relationship with thatchurch.com, with the way that we multi-site, we plant churches, the way we're working together, how do you see that as being something that really really kind of hits at the heart of what Jesus wanted for people, sheep without a shepherd? How do you see how that kind of hits on target?
The one thing that I want to mention in that is most of the time we see the front runner.
Yeah.
And people don't see what goes on behind the scene.
Yeah.
And that was something that is absolutely dynamic about that church. The people that don't get the credit for all that is accomplished, but how much work is being done behind the scenes. But in doing so, it allows you to do your job as far as equipping the saints and allowing them to plug in and find a ministry and multitask as far as setting people aside of, this is your strong point, this is a weak point, this is something that you need to work on and collectively work together. But the behind the scenes, it's amazing the people and the effort that is going on in the church, for sure. It's amazing.
Good stuff. What do you think, Russell?
I like the process of it, because one of the problems that we always had is like our church went through cycles, and we'd start to focus on getting people saved, and we could do that, and we get them saved, and then people are coming to Christ, and all of a sudden we've got all these brand new Christians, so we have to stop the evangelism effort and start doing discipleship effort.
It's good.
And with the processes that church has and the resources, it's like you're leading people to Christ and you're winning the community, and then you pass them off to the next step, and another team takes them and they make disciples out of them.
It's good.
So you never stop with the evangelism or the winning people to Christ. And to me, that's the greatest thing.
It's good.
And we just, once we hit our stride, it just goes.
That's right.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. That's really good. Why does Cabot need thatchurch.com in Cabot? Why is that needed here?
You'll take it?
I'll take it. And again, I want to say beforehand, it's not to offend churches by any means, but churches are really good at making converts out of other Christians and bringing other Christians in, but they've not been effective at reaching the lost where they're at. Thatchurch.com is truly reaching people where they are, in the trenches. I love the analogy of you're getting dirty in the ministry so that you can clean somebody's sins.
That's good, man.
So
That's
you've
good.
got to get dirty in the ministry to wash away someone's sins. And we don't have that ability. That only comes through Jesus Christ. So the emphasis of what Jesus can do and the power that Jesus does do, that is what the church is supposed to rest on and lean upon, and thatchurch.com is doing that.
It's awesome. It's awesome. All right, Russell, bring it.
From this spot right here where we're sitting right now, if you draw a circle 5 miles around, there's between 45 and 50,000 people right here. And if you look at the records that churches provide, and we know how preachers count, but if you look at their records, 80% of people of that 50,000 do not have a church home. They're not connected to a church. You have to assume the majority of those do not know Christ.
Yeah.
So we're living in the uttermost. This is the mission field. This is where Jesus needs to be preached. This is where the gospel has to be proclaimed. Right here, right now. For such a time as this, we're in this place to win the lost to Christ.
That's right.
And everywhere you look, it's your school teachers, the kids that your kids are playing with, the doctor that you go to, the guys that's doing your taxes, the checker at Walmart that's checking out your groceries. Those people need to know Christ. And it's for right now, right here, today. That's why we're here.
Oh, that a preach right there. Somebody say amen.
Amen.
Woo! Golly, that's good right there, boy. You guys are, that right there, that's a gospel message. Shoot. Woo! Wow. Man, that revival just broke out. Just like that. You guys brought it. That's good. That's exactly why we're here. That's awesome. Really, one of the things that we recognized, and I think all of us have experienced this, and you hear it, I hear it echoed in a bunch of pastors, that there's not enough resources. That, if we just had this, if we just had this whatever, there's just something that could push you to that point where the breakover could happen and the breakthrough could happen. And, from the beginning, we wanted to be a church that shared, and we do. We share with a lot of people, a lot of churches that are not that churches, just churches that are out there. We share in lots of ways. But one of the things that we found to be strategic was that I coached churches for a while too, and still do that a little bit. But one of the things I found was that I didn't have enough time to coach everybody in the way that they wanted to go. That there was a few things that we knew and knew how to do, and that if we were going to really be effective in using our time, we had to say, hey, here's how we do it. Not to say that it's the only way, but this is how God's given us to do it. Do you want to do it like us? And if you do, we can make that work. We can put that together and make that work. Now, if you want to do it kind of your way, then I'll give you input as best I can, but really a lot of the resources, need to come. It all has to kind of work our systems and processes and all that. And so multi-site was birthed out of that. And we said, what we'll do is we'll just take what we've got and we'll put it here, and everybody do the same thing. And it's been crazy effective in that, when we're creating a graphic, or we're dealing with a video, or we're producing something, dealing with the website, we can at a very high level that a small church that's just starting out couldn't touch the resources, because we have a staff that does it. And so, but what we do now is instead of that staff person creating that document for one, or that graphic for one, we create it for all of them at the same time. And so now everybody's got the best. The way we check in kids. The cool thing is about multi-site is that there's a feedback. As we go through this process together with us in this is kind of new ground for us. We're going to get feedback, and you're going to go, hey, that's a good idea, but it would work better if we did. And all of a sudden we tweak something, and we go, pow, that's better. That's right. So everybody's working together for the greater good of the kingdom. And then when someone comes to us and says, hey, how do y'all do that? We can say, here's how we do it, because we learned this from one of our campus pastors said, let's do it this way. And we did, and it works. And so that collective energy and effort really works. The other component to multi-site was generosity. Our desire has always been to be a generous church. And Cabot is the product of generosity. Cabot is the product of egos being put away. Cabot is the product of a whole bunch of things that are just biblical and obedience. And what's cool is that Cabot will also birth. She was birthed out of that. She will birth out of that. And we'll continue to add to that, because we believe that Jesus has this vision that every person deserves a significant relationship with a shepherd and someone to guide them into the truth. And we can't rest until we're there. So how do you guys feel about the relationship between the campus, from your perspective, from the campus and the structure, system, process, people, whatever, with thatchurch.com? How do you feel about that relationship, and how is that something that's really beneficial to what we're trying to do?
I think just a big part of it is just being a part of something bigger, something larger, where things are really happening. It's like the New York Giants may win the Super Bowl. If you were to walk around Arkansas last year, you probably wouldn't see anybody wearing a New York Giant football jersey. But if they win the Super Bowl in a couple of weeks, everywhere you go, you'll see New York Giants.
That's good. That's good.
Success breeds success, and people want to be associated with the winner. And I know that's not a real spiritual way to look at it, but the reality is people will go where things are happening and to be part of something bigger.
That's really good.
You've got that brand, the thatchurch.com, and the more we do and the more we're out there, the more that we have the I Serve Other projects, people are going to identify with that brand. And when the crisis comes in their life, when somebody dies or the marriage falls apart, or the addiction starts to really take hold, they're going to be looking for answers at that time.
That's good.
And they'll go where they know, hey, things are happening over there. So just being part of something bigger
that's really good.
That's the key to it.
That's good.
One thing that I really liked was when I first walked into the office at Sherwood. I walked in, and it was as if I belonged there.
Yeah, it's good.
It's not that I'm a teaching pastor at Cabot. No, I'm a teaching pastor at thatchurch.com.
That's right.
And you're part of the family. It's a bigger picture. So you instantly become united with a group of people and their talents and the resources, where when you're on the other side of the line, you're like, wow, I can't accomplish this on my own. But I can when I have other people that are collectively moving in the same direction.
That's good. That's right. That right there, that's good. You're right. That's really good. Very good.